You can talk to anyone at any time now. So why does it feel harder to actually feel close? And when did being connected start feeling so distant? You wake up and reach for your phone, not because you need to, but because it is there. Messages, notifications, updates, waiting quietly. Some mornings there is nothing new, but you still check anyway. You scroll through people living their lives, friends, strangers, people you barely remember. Everyone seems busy, active, surrounded, but something about it feels different. You open a chat and type something casual, then delete it before sending. Then type again and wait. Minutes pass, then hours sometimes. The reply finally comes, short and polite. It feels like a conversation, but not quite. And this is where things get interesting. At night you keep scrolling without thinking. One video turns into 20 without effort. You laugh, you watch, you keep going. But when you stop, the silence feels louder. You see people hanging out together, photos of dinners, trips, random meetups. You wonder when you last did that. You could message someone right now. But somehow, you don't. But that's not the strange part. Even when you do meet people in person, something feels slightly off. There are pauses that did not exist before. Moments where everyone reaches for their phone. Conversations that drift and never fully land. It is not awkward exactly, just thinner somehow. And this is where a quiet question begins. Why does it feel like everyone is around, but no one is really there? Why does it feel like something changed, even though nothing obvious happened? And why does it feel harder to connect, even with more ways to do it than ever? At first it seems random, just small habits, small moments, small shifts. But there is actually a pattern. You notice it in how people reply slower now. Even your closest friends take longer to answer. Not because they do not care, but because everything is competing for attention. You notice it in group chats that never really end. Messages pile up, reactions replace real responses. You are included, but not involved. And this is where things start connecting. You notice it in how plans feel harder to make. Everyone is busy, or tired, or unsure. So plans become tentative, then postponed, then quietly forgotten. It happens so smoothly, you barely notice. But something else is happening. You notice it in yourself, too. You want to reach out sometimes. You think about someone randomly during the day, but instead of calling, you just scroll again. Not because you chose to, but because it is easier. And this is where things get deeper. You start to realize the feeling is shared. Everyone seems slightly distant from everyone else, even people who appear socially active, even people constantly surrounded by others. The distance is subtle, but everywhere. But that is not the strange part. The strange part is how normal it feels. It does not feel like a problem. It just feels like modern life. And this is where the pattern expands. This is not just about individuals anymore. It is about how we all behave together now. Conversations are shorter, more fragmented. Attention moves quickly from one thing to another. Moments of silence get filled instantly. There is no space for stillness anymore. And something important disappears in that space. Connection needs time. But time now feels constantly interrupted. And this is where things shift from personal to cultural. We are always available, but rarely present. We can message instantly, but rarely talk deeply. We can see each other constantly, but rarely understand. And something about it feels different. You start to notice how interactions changed. Likes replaced reactions. Reactions replaced responses. Responses replaced conversations, and conversations became optional. This shift happened slowly, so slowly that no one really questioned it. And this is where things get bigger than expected, because this is not just about habits, it is about the environment shaping those habits. Every platform is designed to keep you engaged, not connected, engaged. And that difference is everything. Engagement means you stay. Connection means you feel, and those are not the same thing. But something else is happening. The more time you spend online, the less time you spend experiencing silence. And silence is where connection begins. Silence is where conversations deepen. Silence is where you notice someone fully. But silence now feels uncomfortable. So we avoid it without realizing. And this is where the system reveals itself. The attention economy does not reward stillness. It rewards movement, clicks, reactions, speed. It rewards quantity over depth. And slowly, we adapt to that rhythm. We become faster in everything. Faster replies, faster thoughts, faster emotions. But connection is not fast. Connection is slow, uncertain, sometimes awkward. And that does not fit the system, so it gets pushed aside. And this is where things get unsettling, because we did not choose this directly. We just adapted to what was around us. The platforms shaped the way we communicate. The way we communicate shaped how we feel, and the way we feel shaped how close we are. But that is not the strange part. The strange part is how it affects everyone differently. Some people feel constantly surrounded, yet alone. Others feel disconnected, even in relationships. Some feel like they are missing something, but cannot explain what it is. And this is where things become personal again. You might have felt it before, that moment after scrolling for hours, when everything goes quiet suddenly, and you feel a kind of emptiness. Not sadness exactly, just a lack of something. Something you cannot name. And this is where things get interesting again. Because that feeling is not random. It is the absence of real connection. But your brain has been busy all day, so it mistakes stimulation for fulfillment. And when the stimulation stops, the emptiness becomes visible. But something else is happening. You begin to expect less from interactions. Short replies feel normal. Delayed responses feel acceptable. Surface-level conversations feel enough. But deep down, something still feels missing. And this is where the contradiction becomes clear. We lowered our expectations of connection, but our need for connection stayed the same. And that gap creates the loneliness, not because we are alone, but because something essential is missing. And this is where things loop back to the beginning. You can talk to anyone at any time, but talking is not the same as connecting. And connecting is what we actually needed. But that is not the strange part. The strange part is how quietly it happened. No single moment caused this shift. No clear change marked the difference. It just slowly became normal. And this is where reflection starts. Think about the last meaningful conversation you had. Not a quick exchange, not a reaction, a real conversation. When was it? You might need a moment to remember. And that hesitation says something. But something else is happening too. You still want connection. You still notice when it happens. You still feel it when it is real. That has not disappeared. It just became rarer and more fragile. And this is where things feel slightly hopeful. Because the feeling itself never left. It is still there, waiting underneath everything. Under the noise, under the scrolling, under the speed. But reaching it now takes intention, and time, and presence. 3 things the current system does not prioritize. But that does not mean they are gone. And this is where things get quietly important. Because once you notice the pattern, you cannot fully unsee it. You start noticing the gaps in conversations, the pauses filled too quickly, the moments that could have been deeper. And something about it feels different again. Not worse exactly, just more visible. And that visibility changes how you experience things. You begin to see when connection almost happens, and when it slips away, and when it gets replaced by something lighter, something easier, something less real. And this is where we return to the question: why does it feel harder to feel close? Maybe it is not because people changed. Maybe it is because the environment changed, and we adapted without realizing the cost. And the cost was depth, and time, and presence. 3 things that quietly hold people together. And this is where the final thought settles. You can still talk to anyone at any time now. That part is still true. But maybe the real question is different. When you do talk to someone, are you actually there? Or just passing through like everything else?